What's up, everybody? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel, and then follow me on social media on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter so you guys don't miss any of our content over the course of this season. All right, let's talk some basketball. But in all likelihood, the play-in teams are going to be running into one of Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Denver, or the Clippers. And so I want to talk about which of those teams the Lakers fare well against and which teams they wouldn't potentially in a series. Let's start with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So how would you feel if the Lakers cracked into the play-in and caught Minnesota in the first round, obviously without home court advantage? How would you feel about that matchup?
I'd feel good. I'd feel like, honestly, before last night, I was really debating whether I felt better about the Lakers facing OKC or Minnesota. And last night confirmed to me that OKC is just the better matchup. It's clear as day in my opinion. But I think Minnesota, to me, it's more of a battle of strengths where Minnesota has a giant front court, obviously, and on the one hand that can give the Lakers problems, but on the other hand, I think they don't have the same advantages that they do against, say, the Clippers. Right? We've seen them overwhelm the Clippers with their size and their length. And they can't do that to the same level against the Lakers, because the Lakers, obviously, when they're playing big, and this is assuming they're not going with Torian at the 4 with 3 guards, if they're relatively, basically healthy, and you have the normal front court of AD, LeBron, Rui, Vando, and then one of Christian or Jackson, and you're kind of going with those 5 guys for basically all your playoff minutes, I don't see Minnesota just like pushing them around. And I think AD has had success against Rudy Gobert in the past. Cat, I think with his shooting, that is a bit of an X factor that if he just has a really good shooting series, I think he's the type of player that could exploit some of what the Lakers are trying to do defensively. But for the most part, like, I don't think AD and LeBron are afraid of Rudy. I think they've both had their levels of success against him over the last few years, and more so in the Utah matchups. But even again, the Lakers have played Minnesota close a couple times in Minnesota. I think they're looking forward to the game coming up here in LA. So I look at it, and to me, it just comes down to if you're looking at those 4 teams, right? You got Shea, who's an MVP candidate. And one of the best ISO scorers in the league. You got the Clippers with their star trio of Kawhi, James Harden, and Paul George. And then you got Denver with the most unstoppable 2-man game we've seen in years in Jokic and Murray. And against the Lakers, it's basically Kobe and Shaq against the Lakers. But then you have Minnesota with Anthony Edwards. And I love Anthony Edwards. I think he's a borderline top 10 guy. But if I'm picking the number one option I'd rather face in the playoffs among those 4 teams, it's Anthony Edwards by a long shot. And I just think that the Lakers, yes, he's athletic, he's explosive, he is the type of guy that can give them problems in a series. But I think there's a pretty good chance that LeBron and AD could be the 2 best players in that series, at least 2 of the top 3, of course. But there's a chance they could just outplay Anthony Edwards collectively. And I personally think it's, and Minnesota's they don't have a great third option. The shooting can come and go with them. The crunch time offense isn't great. So I just look at that matchup of, if it's a bunch of close games, I trust the Lakers' ability to execute against this Minnesota team more so than I trust Minnesota's ability to execute. And I think it's another matchup where the Lakers could win it in 6 or 7 games despite not having home court advantage. Yeah,
when I look at the matchups, I do like some of the matchups in Lakers' favor. So, for instance, if you think about the Lakers on offense, AD has always had his way with Rudy Gobert. He just is good at getting him out of position. His size and length doesn't really bother AD all that much. I like that matchup. In all likelihood, if we imagine the healthy version of the Lakers, it's going to be Jared Vanderbilt starting at the 3. In that environment, and they're most likely going to put Karl Towns on Jared Vanderbilt and basically have him roam and be the low man. Now, the Lakers can combat that in their 5-out offense by using Vanderbilt as a screener a lot and basically bringing Cat into screening actions. You're probably going to get Jaden McDaniels on LeBron. I'm curious to see if LeBron could physically overwhelm Jaden in some ways just because of his strength. Where I like it for the Lakers is the backcourt piece. You're probably taking Ant and putting him on D'Angelo Russell. And for the record, Ant is the exact type of perimeter defender that gives D'Lo all sorts of issues, and I think there'd be some problems there. But this is where you kind of run out of bodies a little bit. Mike Conley is going to end up on Austin Reeves, and I think you could end up having quite a bit of success in pick and roll, kind of having Austin initiate just to get the defense in rotation. Once they're in rotation, it doesn't really matter who's guarding who. Everyone's chasing, and it's about attacking closeouts. And so I kind of that configuration is where I could see the Lakers having some success. On the other end of the floor, where it gets tricky is I really do think there is a pattern with Minnesota where you can bait them into their worst tendencies, especially in the half court. You mentioned their clutch offense. This was before last night's games, but they were 10th worst, I should say, in the NBA in clutch offense, only a 105 offensive rating in those settings. Their clutch offense has been a huge issue down the stretch of multiple games as of late. They just recently lost another one to the Clippers late, just recently lost one before that, I believe to the Kings, if I remember correctly. They've had consistent issues on that end of the floor. And one of the things the Bucks demonstrated is you can actually run a comically deep drop coverage against them, because Anthony Edwards is not a good enough pull-up jump shooter to burn you. And Mike Conley is a little too passive. Like, he can burn that coverage, but he's not the guy that likes to take 20, 25 shots in a game. He's a little bit on the passive end. And so I could just see the Lakers preying on Minnesota's half-court defense issues or half-court offense issues by just putting AD on Gobert and sagging way off of him. My guess is they'd probably keep LeBron on Jaden McDaniels and sag way off of him too. And then they would just have they'd have Jared Vanderbilt on Ant chasing over the top, and then they try to get Mike Conley to beat him. And I do think there's some potential there. The one thing I would say is specifically Minnesota does have the interior size with Gobert, especially if AD is not shooting particularly well, to cause some issues for them at the rim. And we all know that LeBron in particular at this phase of his career against elite rim protectors can sometimes his game becomes more jump shot dependent. And so I just think they're more physically capable of hanging with the Lakers, which makes it more of a coin flip to me than the Thunder. But to put it simply, I absolutely think the Lakers can beat the Timberwolves. I think they're a beatable matchup for them. We talked about the Thunder already. Let's talk about the Clippers. So the Clippers, they have shown that they can do some damage to the Lakers by switching and kind of slowing down some of their offense, but they have some size limitations that the Lakers can prey on. How do you feel about a potential Laker playoff series against the Clippers?
So I think it's similar to the Thunder in terms of the Lakers being able to overwhelm them with their size and their physicality. But I think unlike the Thunder, the Clippers just have more weapons offensively. And I think I'm less confident in this matchup. I'll be upfront with it. Like I think I would favor the Clippers in probably 6 or 7 games over the Lakers if these two teams were facing each other. Like, I think Kawhi, we've seen it. Like, he's one of the few guys that's been able to match LeBron in a playoff series. It's really, I guess, Kawhi and KD are the two guys, like, from a historical perspective, that have been able to go toe to toe in a series with LeBron. And I think James Harden is properly slotted as a number 3, which to me, I think you can kind of live with an off night or even an off series, from James Harden, just because of the collective firepower that they have. I think Zubac has done an underrated job, matching up with AD and just kind of holding his own. I thought missing Paul George and Zubac those are 2 of their 4 or 2 of their 5 best players that they were missing in that last matchup. So and then we've seen, like, even with incredible fourth quarter, incredible comeback, and that was one of the Lakers' best quarters of the season. Probably LeBron's best quarter of the season, but the first 3 quarters were a bit troubling. And we have seen, that was the second time the Clippers got a massive lead against the Lakers and then kind of just, tricked it away. So I, on the one hand, like, you could look at it from a positive perspective, but I also think there are some trends there where the Clippers' ability to switch, their just collective size on the perimeter and athleticism, and then just the different ways that they could attack you offensively, be it James Harden pick and rolls, or Paul George or Kawhi ISOs on the wing, Kawhi posting. Like, I just think the Lakers kind of run out of defensive options ultimately against the Clippers. So I think it would be close. And look, the Lakers won the season series 3-1. So it's not like I don't think the Clippers have their number the way that they have had it in the past. But within the context of some of that, I think the Clippers have it's much closer to like being a 2-2 season series or even a 3-1 in the Clippers' favor than it is just a flat out like Lakers have dominated the matchup. And I think the Lakers, like LeBron has always done well against the Clippers. He's always been able to like they've struggled containing him, and he gets downhill relatively easily against them. AD's been a little bit more up and down in those matchups, and that might ultimately be the swing factor of like, can he just dominate Zoo or Zoo? We've seen Zoo have these like 18, 20 rebound games against AD and like hold his own. So again, like I look at that as maybe, how much can AD dominate that matchup head to head? But Kawhi, Paul George, James Harden, it's just a lot of firepower. I honestly think that they might benefit from not having Russ as well, depending on what happens with his hand. Like he had not been playing as well recently. I thought earlier in the season in some of those matchups, like he didn't play well against the Lakers and helped the Lakers get back in games in like the second quarter and stuff. So like not having Russ, I also think benefits the Clippers in a way. And I think that the Clippers, I would favor them, but it would be closer to a coin flip. But I would give the Clippers like a 55-45 edge.
Yeah, I would pick the Clippers as well, probably by a slightly larger margin. This specific type of team, I think, is the Nuggets are the kryptonite for everybody in the league, just because Jokic is the best player in the world and they have a perfectly constructed top five. But in terms of like strictly based on matchups, the Clippers to me are the perfect type of team to give the Lakers issues, which is actually ironic that they beat them the way that they have. But you correctly pointed out in those two wins. The two that I'm thinking of, because there was one earlier in the season, if I remember correctly, when James Harden just got traded for, and I think a couple guys were out of the lineup that game. But in the last two, they have shown that the Clippers can really cause problems for the Lakers offense with switching. Specifically, they switch with size. They switch with bigger, stronger wings, and so it puts much more of the responsibility on LeBron and AD to be super physically aggressive. And it comes easy to them in the Thunder matchup because they just have such a wild size advantage that they can inflict that relatively easily. That said, in the Clippers games that they've won, it has been physical advantages that the Lakers have been able to inflict on the Clippers to get it done, but it's been these short bursts at the end of games after 3/4 of them not doing that. And the main reason why is like D'Angelo Russell can't beat switches against the Clippers. Austin Reeves can't beat switches against the Clippers. Spencer Dinwiddie hasn't really had too much of an opportunity yet to demonstrate that. I think he's a guy that they could go to there in some situations, but the Clippers have really good guard defenders, so I'm not even sure necessarily that is an option that they could go to. It 100% comes down to, can LeBron bully his way? Can AD bully his way on the offensive glass? Like that last Clippers game, they were getting killed by the switching all night long until LeBron started bombing threes over Daniel Tice. And then when he did that, he started drawing double teams, which then got the defense in rotation, and they were able to play out of that with their offensive skill. But that's a lot to ask for LeBron to hit, 4 or 5 pull-up threes in a playoff series 4 times out of 7. And so I just think it would just put a lot of physical ask on LeBron and AD to do that to the Clippers. And so that specific matchup causes me a little bit of concern. Zubac in particular, too, he's one of those guys that can just bury AD on the offensive glass. And like that's a matchup that he's kind of struggled with a little bit relative to the way he deals with a lot of the other bigs around the league. And so I think we can agree, like, if there was a perfect outcome, it would be the Lakers get up to call it the 7 seed. And somehow it shakes out that the Nuggets get the 1 seed and the Clippers get the 4, which, by the way, is very much on the table. And then the Lakers end up getting a Thunder team in the first round. And then after that, they get to go play a Minnesota team in the second round. And then the Clippers and the Nuggets have to beat the hell out of each other in the conference semis. And you get one of them in the conference finals. And hopefully by that point, it's late May and Jared Vanderbilt is back in shape and feeling good. And Jared Vanderbilt has not played in any of the Denver Nuggets matchups this year. That's the one big thing. Like last year in their 4-out offense, Vanderbilt could be ignored a little bit easier this year because they're using him as a screener so much more. I actually think it kind of is an interesting wrinkle in that series. And that would be potentially the little bit of silver lining that you cling to, is like Jared Vanderbilt could be the difference maker in a Denver Nuggets series. Now, I don't think that's the case, but if you're a Lakers optimist, that's what you're clinging to. And so there is a pathway there. And here's the thing: when you're a flawed team, when you're not of Denver's ilk, matchups are everything. Matchups are literally everything. And so for them to catch either Minnesota or Oklahoma City in the first round, I think is going to be the biggest indicator of their capability when we get into the postseason. Do you have any concern about them in the play-in tournament? Like if they, like I'm still worried about them being able to go on the road to Dallas or on the road to Sacramento, on the road to Phoenix, on the road to New Orleans. I'm worried about that. New Orleans is probably the one team in that group that I'm completely unconcerned with. But like, I don't know, like Sacramento comes to town tomorrow. They're speed guards. They're not, the kind of shifty guards that Oklahoma City had. They're speed guards. And I'm actually worried about tomorrow night's matchup. Are you worried at all about the Lakers' ability just to get out of the play-in tournament?
Yeah. And to me, it really comes down to their seeding. Like if this team is the 10 seed and they have to win 2 road play-in games, I think there's a pretty decent shot they don't come out of the play-in tournament. Now, if they're the 9 seed and they have home court advantage, at least in that first matchup, I really think it might be as simple as like, do they have home court advantage in the play-in versus, do they don't? And now I'm with you. I think New Orleans is it's a good matchup for them. Sacramento has been a bad matchup for them the last couple of years. I think. But with the way Sacramento has played though over the last couple months, like I'm really interested to see how the Lakers handle the next 2 games against them over the next week or so, just because both are essentially must wins. Given the Kings are a game and a half ahead of them, 3 in the loss column, but like the Lakers can control their destiny a bit here. If they can beat the Kings twice in the next week, that brings in a team that they could potentially jump here over the next few weeks. And now that you get into that 7-8 matchup, which is a lot more advantageous, just because if you lose that first game, all right, well, you have a second shot to get in as the 8th seed. So too. I think for them, like, and at home. So I think for them, like, I look at New Orleans and Sacramento as teams I would pick them against for sure. Phoenix and Dallas, I'm a little bit more concerned on. I mean, we talked about it at the beginning of the season. I was very high on Phoenix. I've dropped a little bit on them, but I'm still keeping my Phoenix stock. I still think that's a team none of the top seeds are going to want to see in round 1, just with that. Like if they can get healthy, and that's a big if, I understand that. But if they can get healthy, the offense has just been so great with those 3 on the floor that I mean, personally, I don't want to see Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in a playoff series. So those 2 in a 1-game setting, like it could be a game like we've seen with the Lakers and Suns this year, where those guys just don't shoot the ball well, and they're very jump shot reliant. And if it's not falling, then I think the Lakers can overwhelm them. But if they are falling and Nurkic is holding his own against AD, and like some of the similar things we saw in that last matchup, like that's a pretty tough matchup, especially with Phoenix likely having home court advantage in a potential play-in game against the Lakers. So Dallas I'm closer to 50-50 on. Like the Lakers are 1-2 against them, but those have relatively been close games for the most part. So, but I don't want to see Luka in a play-in situation if I'm the Lakers either. So like the West is just brutal, man. If you go like 1 through 10, 1 through 9, like every team you can make an argument for why they could go on a run, or why they could lose in the play-in or the first round. I think the Lakers are probably the poster child of that, just because of the ups and downs we've seen this season. But I definitely think, especially if they're playing on the road, there's a shot that they don't make it out of the play-in. And I do trust LeBron and AD in a 1-game setting. I just think with the way this team has performed on the road, they do have some big wins, but they also have, they're under 500 on the road and it's been pretty stark for most of the season. It's kind of, are they home or are they on the road? So to me, it really comes down to matchups and whether they're home, whether they're on the road. But I do think there's a chance that they just don't make it out.
Yeah, 22-10 at home, 12-19 on the road. Now, I'm of the opinion that I would want to be no lower than 7th heading into this. simply because of the fact that the Lakers have some familiarity with that 7-8 game too. They've won it twice, last year and then back in 2021. LeBron is a guy I really trust in that one game setting, but at the role players, they're young role players that we keep thinking about this. It's like LeBron and AD, they're both, a little bit old in their, AD is not that old, but he's old compared to most of his peers because of the injuries that he's dealt with. LeBron obviously being 39. The rest of the team is a lot of young kids, like relative to the rest of the league. And so I think that's why they struggle a little bit when they go on the road. So I think getting up there is important. They're actually only 3 games back from the 5 seed. That's the other element of this. But at the same time, it's still in play. But I think the 7 seed would be ideal because I would want to face Minnesota or Oklahoma City before I'd want to face that Clippers team.